Bonnie, can you confirm, Bonnie Reish, can you confirm that you can see that slide?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to Hormones and Metabolism, a doctor's guide for women. Thank you for being here. I just want to encourage you to stay to the very end because there will be a lot of really great giveaways to the people that are listening, taking notes, and ready to answer a few questions. So please stay tuned for the end. So have you ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but your body just isn't responding the way it used to? You could, be eating all the same things, doing all the same workouts, but all of a sudden things just aren't clicking like they always have. So in this presentation, we're going to sit down with Dr. Erin Barrett to explore what's happening in our bodies as our hormones shift and how those changes can impact our metabolism, weight, energy, sleep, and mood. So why we're here tonight? Well, too many women have been simply told to live with hormone-related symptoms. It's you go to your doctor and they don't do complete blood work, or they don't, they're just not looking at all the things that maybe could be helpful to be looked at. So many have been left searching for answers and support. The good news, though, is that there are practical ways to support your body naturally. So we want to learn how to support our hormone balance, our brain function, and our mental clarity, our healthy energy and metabolism, not relying on coffee, not relying on stimulants, just a natural, steady flow of energy through the day, and a metabolism that keeps up with us. So Dr. Erin is going to share with us simple science-based strategies that can help you feel your best. Healthy aging doesn't happen by accident. It is built through the daily choices that nourish our bodies, protect our muscles, balance our metabolism, and support our hormones. I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Erin Barrett. I was a little bit blown away by her list of degrees behind her name. I knew she was smart, and I have to say I feel almost a little intimidated at the level of intellect in front of us here. So Erin is an expert in nutrition, metabolic biochemistry, and associated diseases, including obesity and diabetes. Erin has her PhD in nutritional biochemistry from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She has her master's in clinical research from Indiana University and in biochemistry and molecular biology from Georgetown University. That's quite a mouthful. Her graduate work focused on determining the role of protein in the formation of fat cells and in fat metabolism. So I would say that she's quite an expert on protein. We are thankful to have her knowledge, experience, and wellness education available to us. And she's currently working with Shaklee, helping to develop and launch products. And lead their clinical studies as well. So Erin, we would love to hear from you.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And it sounds like we'll do Q&As at the end, but if there's anything that's super pressing or if you don't understand something, because parts of this are a little bit complicated, feel free to drop in the chat and hopefully I can see it. So one thing I want to start with is, menopause, perimenopause, this is a really significant transition. And a lot of people see it kind of as an ending, right? But I really want for you all to kind of shift your focus and think of this as an opportunity for a fresh start, right? Like, let's embrace this change, see it as an opportunity for growth, empowerment, self-discovery, use it as a time to set new goals, maybe explore new passions, maybe, try to find new interests. Just think of it as a new chapter in your life as opposed to an ending. You mentioned this, Julie, that I think previously, maybe even just the previous generation, like my mom's generation, it was almost taboo to talk about this transition, right? We were just told, yep, this is something that happens, just deal with it. Whereas now I think women are just much more comfortable. And even my husband listened to a podcast about menopause and how to support me as I'm transitioning through this phase in my life. So not only are women feeling more comfortable, talking about this, engaging with other women, but I think similarly, partners are trying to become educated so they can support their partners through this transition. So I just encourage you to, again, just see this as an opportunity. You can take charge of this transition, take charge of your health, do things to mitigate or minimize these quote unquote side effects that are a consequence of this transition. Make sure you're building a supportive community, having people that you can talk to through this transition. And I think probably one of the most powerful things is knowledge. Like, stay informed. Make sure you're reading, listening. Obviously, you're here today so that you can learn. Knowledge is power, right? And if you have that knowledge, it's really going to help you to, like I said, first take charge of your health. And even as part of that support community you're building, be a contributing factor there in educating the women around you. So, okay, so we'll start with, I'm sure many of you know about this, but just the stages of menopause. There's perimenopause, which is really that transitional phase. So this is the transitional phase that ultimately leads up to menopause. And what's happening here is your menstrual cycles are becoming more irregular. Hormone levels they're pretty erratic. And that's one of the reasons why we see so many of the side effects we do during perimenopause is because of these erratic changes in hormones, particularly estrogen, where they're going up, they're coming down, depending on where you are in the cycle. And then also some other hormones just slowly declining. Menopause itself is that point at which you have not had a menstrual cycle for 12 months. This is when hormone levels really level off. They become, much lower in most cases. And many of those, quote unquote symptoms that you experience during menopause aren't as strong or they go away completely. And then of course, postmenopause is when those hormone levels stabilized and you're past that period of having regular periods. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about all the things that are happening hormonally as we transition through menopause. This really isn't about just changes in a single hormone. I think oftentimes we think or attribute things that are happening to us during this transition exclusively to estrogen, but it's our ovaries are producing a lot of different hormones, right? And what happens during this transition is our ovaries become less responsive, and as a consequence of that, they're either erratically producing hormones or producing less of each of these hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, these are the main hormones that are produced by our ovaries. And during that menopause transition, we're seeing changes in each of these hormones. And then I also mentioned here insulin and cortisol. Of course, they're not produced by our ovaries, but they're impacted by the hormonal changes that we're seeing with the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So just really high level, what happens with estrogen is estrogen levels, they're really fluctuating, like I talked about, really, really dramatically during perimenopause before they really decline to consistently low levels after menopause. And again, menopause is defined as that 12 consecutive months without a menstrual period. If you are, in that phase of life and you're tracking your menstrual cycles, you may notice that symptoms are more pronounced during certain times of the month. And that may be because you're seeing, big spikes in estrogen or big dips in estrogen. So again, just to hit on this pretty hard, estrogen levels aren't only, declining throughout this perimenopause phase, but they're really fluctuating very wildly. You're seeing high spikes and really low dips. Some common effects of these, dramatically fluctuating estrogen levels are these common, I hate to use the word symptom, but I don't know what other word to use. These, common symptoms of menopause. So things like hot flashes, night sweats, sleep disturbances, brain fog, mood changes, joint discomfort, all of these. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on this in just a bit. But many of these are really a consequence of those erratic estrogen and then declining estrogen levels. And then we know, and I'll talk about this a bit more later, estrogen regulates so many different things in our body. So it supports your bone density, it supports your cardiovascular health, muscle function, mitochondrial function, insulin sensitivity. So because of this, you become more susceptible to a lot of different health outcomes. So risk of osteoporosis, heart disease, weight gain, especially in your abdominal region, metabolic dysfunction. So things like diabetes, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, the risk of all of those increase as we're seeing these changes in hormones. With progesterone, what we see here is, like I mentioned, progesterone levels are are declining during perimenopause. And then after menopause, they're really persistently very low. One of the primary things that these declines in progesterone do is they affect your cycle. So if you're seeing irregular menstrual cycles, that's can be, mostly attributed to those changes in progesterone levels. And they also impact your sleep. One thing that I know a lot of women deal with is they wake up at 2 a.m. and they can't fall back asleep, or they're up from 2 to 5, and progesterone is to blame for much of that, as well as hot flashes and night sweats that women experience that contribute to that as well. And then progesterone also has impacts on anxiety, mood changes, and then testosterone. This is one I'll spend a decent amount of time on a bit. So, I think we often think of testosterone with men, but ovaries also produce testosterone, and it's also produced by adrenal glands. But as we transition through menopause, as we get older, testosterone levels tend to decline. And what that has effects on are, one thing very importantly is muscle mass. And we'll talk about the implications of that in a bit, but has implications on muscle mass. So declines in muscle mass occur as a consequence of declines in testosterone. Strength declines because you see declines in muscle mass. Energy levels also decline. Libido is affected by this. So we're seeing potentially, less lean mass, lowering of your metabolic rate, increases in weight gain, all because of these changes in testosterone that you're experiencing. And then just really quickly to hit on the other two hormones that I have listed here, insulin and cortisol. So one thing that happens during menopause as estrogen levels are declining is our cells become less sensitive to insulin. Okay, so is everyone aware of what insulin does? So what happens is when we eat food, particularly carbohydrate-rich foods, our pancreas produces insulin. And what that insulin does is it helps to pull the sugar from those carbohydrates, the glucose, into our cells so our cells can use it for energy production or for storage. As we transition through menopause and estrogen levels decline, our cells become less sensitive to that insulin. Sorry, our cells become less sensitive to that insulin. So what that means is you have to produce more insulin. So the result is glucose levels stay elevated a little bit longer. Your cells are less responsive to insulin, so you're having to produce more. And the effect of this oftentimes is insulin resistance that can lead to prediabetes or type 2 diabetes as well. It also has effects on where your body is storing fat. So I didn't know this until I did some reading on it recently, that estrogen actually is one of the things that controls where you store fat. And when estrogen levels are high, your body tends to store fat just under your skin, that subcutaneous fat, which is inert. It has, really no adverse consequences. But as estrogen declines, you tend to store that fat around your belly. It's called visceral fat, and that's associated with a lot of negative consequences. So those are really implications of changes in insulin that occur during menopause as well. And then cortisol, of course, is the body's primary stress hormone. So cortisol production doesn't necessarily change during menopause. What happens is how we're regulating that cortisol is what we see change. And this has implications on sleep. So it disrupts sleep. It increases your sensitivity to stress. It slows recovery. So maybe, and this is one thing that I have definitely noticed is just exercise is a lot harder. It slows recovery. It makes physical activity more challenging. So there are a lot of implications of these changes in how our body is regulating cortisol. Okay, if you go to the next one, I'll go through these pretty quickly, but I do think it's important to just talk briefly about, some common symptoms that women experience during this menopause transition. Of course, hot flashes are the most common menopause-related symptoms. And what they involve is this like very sudden wave of heat or kind of wave of warmth that is oftentimes accompanied with like sweating or reddening of the skin, maybe your heartbeat. I think that's one thing women often notice as their heartbeat starts racing. They usually last between 1 and 5 minutes. And the reason this happens is when estrogen drops, your brain's thermostat, so that your hypothalamus, it just becomes much more sensitive to small temperature changes. So maybe you notice these hot flashes if cleaning the house, like something that may normally get you a little bit, warmer. Maybe suddenly it feels like, oh my gosh, why do I feel like I'm sweating profusely from just cleaning the house? It's because, again, that thermostat is just much more sensitive to these really small changes in temperature. So the result is that you feel this like sudden surge of heat and potentially sweating as well. A couple of things that I definitely recommend, and not just me, but experts in this space as well, is try to track your hot flashes. If this is something that you're experiencing and is disturbing you. So write them down, try to figure out what triggers them, try to avoid things that do appear to trigger them. I think it's always important. I mean, hydration is important regardless, but even more important as women are transitioning, just have a nice cold glass of water by you, at night, maybe when you're working at your desk, so that if you do experience a hot flash, you have that cold drink to cool you off. I remember this was a recommendation from my mom, always dress in layers. It's easy to remove layers if you get warm. A fan at night is obviously very helpful. Deep breaths, they definitely help to regulate that thermostat. And then, of course, there are things that you can do through supplementation or through your diet. Um, there are phytoestrogen rich foods, so things like soy, edamame, that look and act like estrogen. So it can almost, your body can think that it's getting estrogen, even though estrogen levels are declining. So phytoestrogen rich foods like soy and edamame, like I mentioned, can be really effective. And then supplements are always an important thing to consider to help manage hot flashes and night sweats. Okay, sleep disturbances. I love this picture. Um, this is also, as I mentioned, really just a consequence or an effect of estrogen and progesterone levels declining. So two things that those hormones do are one, help to calm your brain. And we know that one thing that's really important as you're laying down and trying to get to sleep is that calming of the body and the calming of the brain. And if estrogen or progesterone are helping to calm the brain, and we're seeing declines in those two hormones, that can have implications on your body's ability to calm the brain. The other interesting thing is, I'm sure you've all heard of melatonin, but estrogen has an effect on melatonin, which regulates the sleep-wake cycle. So if you're seeing declines in estrogen, this can have implications on your body's production of melatonin and how you fall asleep and stay asleep. So just a couple quick strategies to help to deal with sleep disturbances, exercise, and you're going to see a lot of these same things across all these different symptoms or different symptoms. Exercise, this is one of the single best ways to help support a good night's sleep. I encourage exercise for so many different reasons, and this doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to be going out running marathons. You can just go out for a nice little walk, or during the day, getting up and walking around the house briefly. Just moving your body is really important. A couple things to avoid: large meals before bedtime, of course, smoking, drinking alcohol. Those of course can have implications on your sleep. Limiting screen time, I know that's a hard one, but maybe just limit your phone to outside of the bedroom, because that of course can affect your sleep. And then good sleep hygiene is really important. So keeping your bedroom dark, quiet, cool, that's going to help with sleep. Now, you've heard this one, like trying to go to bed at the same time every day, wake up at the same time, even on the weekends. That's an important strategy as well. And then supplements can be really effective as well. Mood changes. I know this is one thing that a lot of women deal with, and estrogen is one of the main things responsible for oftentimes the mood changes that women experience during menopause. Estrogen plays a role in producing a lot of those mood specific chemicals in your brain, like serotonin and dopamine. So again, like we talked about with melatonin, that when estrogen is fluctuating, declining, we see fluctuations in a lot of these mood specific hormones like serotonin and dopamine. And that's oftentimes why your mood is affected. You might have really high highs and really low lows. So that's really a consequence of those declines in estrogen as well. A lot of the same suggestions here: make sure you're getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, avoiding those things that do trigger stress. We talked a lot about community and how important that is. So, find your support system, engage with them, and then supplements are also an important strategy here. Cognitive declines. So this one's really interesting in terms of why this is happening. So estrogen actually plays a really important role in brain metabolism. So what it does is it helps your brain cells. So the primary fuel for your brain is glucose. And it actually helps your brain cells use that glucose. And then it also supports communication between neurons in your brain. So same narrative here. When the estrogen levels are dropping or erratically going up and down, the brain just becomes a lot less efficient at using glucose for energy. So it's producing, in effect, less energy. So that's when you start seeing those cognitive declines that often accompany menopause or perimenopause. Um, and then, like I talked about, the communication between neurons, estrogen plays a role in that too. So if you're seeing that disrupted, that can have implications on concentration. It can have implications on focus. Maybe you start forgetting words, names, why you entered a room. That's definitely something that I struggle with. You walk into a room and it's like, wait, why did I come here? So those are, consequences of, again, the estrogen levels declining. Two other things I'll mention really quickly before we go to the next slide. Weight gain, that's something that many women experience during menopause or perimenopause. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but this is due to hormonal shifts in where and how your body is storing fat. So when estrogen levels are high or in the normal healthy range, you're tending to store it under your skin. But as they shift and decline, you tend to store it around your abdomen, right? And that has implications on health and wellness. And then, of course, you see declines in muscle mass with the declines in testosterone. When you have less muscle, your resting metabolic rate declines, and that can contribute to weight gain. And then we talked a little bit about insulin sensitivity as well, which can have implications on weight gain. And then two other quick things, hair and skin. This one's really interesting, and I know a lot of women start noticing changes in their skin and their hair as they transition through menopause. The reason for this is, and I think this is super interesting. So fibroblasts, these are the cells in your skin that are responsible for making collagen. And collagen, if you remember, is the protein that gives your skin that strength and the structure. And as estrogen starts to decline, what happens is those fibroblasts, they produce less collagen. So that's one reason why we start seeing declines in collagen, and then, wrinkles start to appear as well. And the other thing that estrogen regulates is there are enzymes that break down collagen. And when estrogen levels are high, they inhibit it. But as estrogen levels decline, those collagen breaking down enzymes, or kind of Pac-Man, they become more active. So you really have two things against you when estrogen declines when it comes to skin health. So those cells that are responsible for making collagen, which gives your skin that strength and structure and the firmness, they are less efficient at making collagen. And then those Pac-Man, those enzymes that break down collagen, become more active. So less collagen is being made and more collagen is being broken down. Okay. So this one, I know this is something that a lot of people are very interested in. So I thought I'd spend just a couple minutes, a little bit more time on what happens to metabolism during menopause. And I've hit on this a few times, but I think hearing it a few times and maybe in a little bit more detail here is always helpful for retaining the information. So as we mentioned, I think we talked about, so often we think about just the declines in estrogen during menopause or perimenopause. And understanding that the hormones are not just regulating our reproductive system, but they're also having an impact on how our body burns calories, how our body builds muscle, how our body stores fat, how our body manages blood sugar. So all of these things are changing and impacted during menopause. And as a result, your metabolism is changing too. So the first reason this happens is your body's burning fewer calories. So the reason for this is related to those declines in muscle, right? So as estrogen and testosterone start to decline, and in particular the testosterone, we start to lose muscle. And muscle is very metabolically active. Muscle actually burns a lot of our calories at rest, a lot more than fat. So as we start to lose muscle, What that means is our resting metabolic rate, how many calories we need each day, goes down. And that means that in order to maintain that same weight, we're going to have to eat fewer calories. But typically, we don't dramatically change how much we're eating during perimenopause, right? So the consequence is oftentimes weight gain. Does that make sense? So we're losing muscle. As a result, our resting metabolic rate declines. That means our body needs fewer calories. So unless we start consuming less food, we're going to see natural weight gain. The next thing that happens is, and I mentioned this, but your body stores more fat, and then you tend to store it around the waist and the visceral fat, particularly around your belly. So before menopause, estrogen is really encouraging the storage of fat under your skin. But as estrogen declines, what happens is that pattern is really shifting. So you start to deposit it in your abdomen, and that is the dangerous fat. That fat is more metabolically active. That fat releases inflammatory molecules. We know inflammation is critical for so many downstream effects. The visceral fat also releases hormones that can exacerbate things like insulin sensitivity, risk for heart disease, type 2 diabetes, other metabolic conditions. All those things that we mentioned can be impacted by this transition. And then the last thing is blood sugar becomes just a lot harder to regulate. We talked about this, but just a little bit more detail here is that as our estrogen declines, our body just becomes a lot less sensitive to insulin. And that's that hormone that is pulling glucose into your cells. So that means you have to make more insulin to move that glucose into your cells. And over time, this leads to insulin resistance, then prediabetes and diabetes. The important thing is, as I mentioned at the top of this conversation, is you know, there are things that you can do about these changes. They don't have to just happen, right? Things like preserving your muscle through getting adequate protein, regular strength training, physical activity. There are just so many different things that you can do to make this transition much more seamless and minimize the likelihood of some of these, symptoms happening to you. So if we go to the next section, a couple things that you can do is, focusing on a healthy, balanced diet. So, just the standard recommendations, diets rich in fruits and vegetables and lean protein and dairy and, all these things are going to be really important. Things that I would focus on specifically, we mentioned this earlier, is phytoestrogen rich foods. So things like tofu, edamame, soy milk, they mimic estrogen. So as estrogen is super erratic, consuming those foods can almost, I don't want to say counter, but your body thinks it's estrogen. So a lot of those symptoms can be minimized by phytoestrogen rich foods. Protein obviously is very important. We talked about lean mass declines because of declining testosterone levels. So making sure that you're getting enough protein is going to be really important to help build and maintain that lean muscle. Bone mass, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but bone mass is one thing that naturally declines as we transition through menopause. Similar to when I talked about collagen and estrogen impacting the cells that make collagen, uh, estrogen also impacts the cells that make bone. So what happens during menopause is that balance between building bone and breaking down bone skews in the favor of breaking down bone. So making sure that you're getting enough foods that are rich in calcium and vitamin D is really important. And then a couple of things like limiting spicy foods, those can impact hot flashes and night sweats. Alcohol and caffeine, limiting those as well because they can exacerbate hot flashes and night sweats is really important too. Next one, exercising. I mentioned this a couple times, but exercising regularly, aerobic, strength training, flexibility. This can help to manage weight, which we know we're oftentimes shifting where we're carrying fat, we're gaining weight because we need fewer calories. So this can help with that. And also, we just talked about bone health. This can help to maintain bone health. It can build strength. We know not only does lean mass decline, but as a consequence, strength declines, which can have implications on just our freedom, right? Our ability to do daily things. So exercise is important for all of those. Plus, it helps support quality sleep. It helps improve mood. So really all the different things that are commonly experienced during menopause, exercise can help support. The next one, stress. So, um, you know, for better or for worse, I think menopause can be a stressful time. We're going through some changes, and then on top of that, the hormone fluctuations, physical changes can also add to that and exacerbate that. So, stress management techniques, things like meditating, deep breathing, yoga, even physical activity, these can really help to reduce stress levels and really just help to support overall well-being. And interestingly, women just they're more likely to experience stress than men are. So add that on top of this transition, and I think you're just at a very heightened phase to experience this stress. Okay, and then one of the last things before we go into some product recommendations, I mentioned this for each of the different quote unquote symptoms, but supplements can be a really effective strategy. I always recommend supplementation in combination with lifestyle, support or lifestyle changes, together they're better. So consider supplementation, but make sure you're pairing it with those lifestyle strategies that I recommended as well. And one of the reasons why supplementation is so important, if you go to the next slide, is nutrient inadequacies are very real. So often these menopause symptoms are exacerbated because we're not getting the nutrition that we need to support ourselves. You can see here things like vitamin A, C, D, E, all the different vitamins and minerals highlighted in yellow. These are nutrients that most people just aren't getting enough of. And like I said, when you don't have that solid foundational nutrition, this can really exacerbate a lot of those symptoms that you experience during menopause. So supplements can not only provide like targeted support, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but help to alleviate hot flashes, help you sleep better, help to manage stress, but they can also help fill nutrient gaps, which oftentimes, like I said, really exacerbate a lot of those symptoms that women experience during this phase. Okay, so just really quickly on that note, in terms of supplementation, a couple products that Shaklee offers that I think can be complementary to the lifestyle changes that I recommended. Menopause Balance Complex. So this contains key ingredients. The product itself is intended to help reduce hot flashes and mood swings. It's formulated with black cohosh, and there have been several studies done on black cohosh showing that it can help reduce the frequency and severity of hot flashes. It can also help to promote restful sleep and reduce mood swings. And then it also contains, we talked a bit about, phytoestrogens. So it also contains soy isoflavones and flaxseed. So these are phytoestrogens that have really been studied for mimicking estrogen and supporting heart, bone, and breast health. We also have a couple different solutions to support sleep. We have, and I love this one, an evening tea called Rest and Rewind. This is also very experiential. One thing that is so important with getting a good night's sleep is relaxing and unwinding before you get into bed. And this is a tea, you add it to warm water, and really just that ritual of sitting down with a warm glass of tea helps you relax and unwind. But it also contains relaxing ingredients, magnesium and lemon balm to help you relax and prepare for sleep. And then it contains 5-HTP. So 5-HTP is a precursor to melatonin. So this is a melatonin-free product, but that 5-HTP inside your body is converted to melatonin to help you fall asleep and stay asleep. We always, I should have mentioned, have what we like to refer to as a Shaklee difference with all of our products. In many cases, it's science to support the ingredients or the product itself. It may be a synergy between ingredients and the products. It may be, this is across the board with all of our products, but quality standards that we apply to the sourcing of the ingredients and the formulating of the products. In the case of Rest and Rewind, one thing that we did is we added a polyphenol blend to this product. So one thing that's really important during sleep is it's a restorative phase, right? It's when we're repairing damage, we're holding on to memories and all the things that we learned during the day. And that polyphenol blend, it's really rich in antioxidants. So it's helping to protect your cells. So it's really helping with optimizing that sleep. We also have another option for Sleep Dream Serene. This one does contain melatonin. So if you're looking for a melatonin solution, this one does contain a very, physiological level of melatonin, which is important. So this is something that's going to help you fall asleep faster, wake up more rested, and it has some relaxing ingredients too with the lemon balm. Okay, we have a couple options for stress as well. Again, pairing this with some of the um, lifestyle modifications that I recommended. So Balance and Chill. This is one of my favorite products. This is a strawberry flavored gummy. This one has L-theanine and ashwagandha to help you relax and unwind. And it also has some ingredients for mood support as well. So this is a great product for that menopause transition because it's going to help with the stress and the mood. The really cool, and I love this one and really pairs nicely with what I just told you about filling nutrient gaps. The Shaklee difference for this one is so often people experience these targeted needs like, man, I'm stressed all the time because they're not getting enough of a particular nutrient. And there is a lot of data showing that B vitamin inadequacies, specifically B6 and B12, can lead to stress and mood challenges. So we formulated this product with those nutrients to help fill those gaps to support like that underlying contributor to mood challenges. And then we also have Stress Relief Complex. This one has L-theanine, ashwagandha that are really helping to support relaxation and minimizing of stress. Okay, the next one I want to spend just a little bit of time with before we go into the product is we talked a lot about, or not a lot, but a bit about lean mass declining through the menopause transition and continuing to decline as we age. And one of the reasons for that during menopause is those declining testosterone levels. And that is referred to as we see these declines in lean muscle mass, that is referred to as sarcopenia. Sarcopenia and that loss of lean muscle, like we talked about, can have implications on so many different things, from loss of strength, loss of independence to weight gain, right? So a couple things that you can do to help support or minimize lean muscle loss and sarcopenia is make sure you're doing your resistance training. Weightlifting, it doesn't have to be just weightlifting. It can be body weight exercises. You could just be doing squats or lunges. You don't need the weights or even just resistance bands. And that's going to help to maintain and also build lean muscle mass as well as strength. Protein-rich diets, this is so, so important. If you don't have, you can do all the strength training you want, but if you're not fueling your body with the protein it needs to build, to repair that muscle and build that muscle, you're not going to see the lean muscle gain. So making sure that you're getting enough protein is also really, really important. And on the flip side of the exercise, we want to try to minimize sedentary behavior. If you're having to sit in front of a computer all day, just set your little timer, make sure you're getting up and moving your body occasionally, because sedentary behavior can also exacerbate that lean muscle loss. And then supplements, of course, are an important option here too. We know that just like with essential vitamins and minerals, just most people are not getting enough protein. They're not getting the protein that they need to support lean muscle. So we have some wonderful options here. Our Life Shake, which is available in two protein options, both plant-based, one, pea-based protein and the other one soy-based protein. Both have the same nutritional profile, so 20 grams of protein. It also has 25 vitamins and minerals, 6 grams of fiber. So this really is a healthy meal. You can do this instead of a breakfast or a lunch because you're getting really all the nutrition that you would get from a whole healthy meal. The Shaklee difference here is that added leucine. So has everyone heard of leucine before? Can't see everybody. So protein is made up of individual building blocks called amino acids, and your body uses those building blocks to make protein, including muscle. But when you eat protein, if you don't have that trigger, that signal that tells your body to actually use those building blocks or amino acids to make muscle, that those building blocks, those amino acids are just going to sit there. And leucine is that signal. So this is really our very unique and, scientifically studied Shaklee difference for our protein products is that we have added leucine. So we've included enough leucine in our LifeShake products to help trigger that muscle protein synthesis. So we're giving you the protein, the building blocks, and then we're giving you that signal that says, hey, use these building blocks, those amino acids to make lean muscle. And we've done some studies that show that, when you lose weight, your body doesn't differentiate. You lose fat, you lose muscle. And we saw that when people were using these shakes, they lost fat and they gained lean muscle. So like we talked about the importance of preventing sarcopenia is building that lean muscle, and LifeShake is proven to do that. We also have some really cool data on this that the amino acids, those building blocks that I talked about, are absorbed. We also see some interesting data that this helps naturally boost GLP-1 levels. So this is inside your body, the natural production of GLP-1. Of course, GLP-1 is that hormone that sends a signal to your brain that I just ate, I'm full, stop eating. So you have the protein in the LifeShake, which is satiating, which is going to help you to feel fuller for longer. You have that natural production of GLP-1 that's going to help you feel fuller for longer. And then you have all those building blocks plus that leucine that are going to help you to build lean muscle while you're losing weight on the LifeShake. And then the last thing I'll mention is bone health and osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is another thing that commonly occurs in women, and it's really initiated during that menopause transition, because what happens, I think I just mentioned this a bit ago, is estrogen helps keep bone strong by helping to maintain that balance between bone breakdown and bone formation. As estrogen levels decline, bone breakdown outpaces bone formation. So you see these dramatic declines in bone mineral density. 80% of osteoporosis occurs in women, so it's predominantly a women's health issue. A lot of that bone mass is lost, 20% in the first couple years after menopause. And 1 in 2 women over the age of 50 have osteoporosis related fractures. So this is definitely something that we want to get ahead of. We talked earlier in the nutrition section, make sure you're getting your recommended amounts of calcium and vitamin D. Both of these nutrients are what we call shortfall nutrients, which means most people aren't getting enough of them. So yes, focus on your vitamin D and calcium rich foods, but supplementation is definitely something you want to consider when it comes to calcium and vitamin D. Exercise, we talked about all the reasons exercise is important. Exercise also, not only does it help build muscle, but it helps to strengthen those bones, especially that weight-bearing exercise. So make sure you're getting out there and moving your body, maintaining a healthy weight. If you are outside of your body's healthy weight range, that can have implications on your bone health. And then smoking exacerbates bone health decline as well as alcohol. So a couple strategies in addition to supplementation. So at Shaklee, we do have a couple different options that can help you get your calcium and vitamin D. The two nutrients together you can get from Osteomatrix, which not only contains calcium and vitamin D, but also magnesium and vitamin K, which are all important for bone building. And then vitamin D, again, this is one of those nutrients. I think it's like 98% of people just aren't getting enough vitamin D. So vitamin D is 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. So another great way to make sure that you're filling any nutrient gaps that you have when it comes to vitamin D. And I think, oh, one more. And then heart health. So I mentioned just that heart health is another thing that is impacted by declining estrogen levels. That's actually more than any other thing the number one killer of women. So something we definitely want to think about as we transition through menopause, and also just get into those later years of life. Make sure you're adopting a heart healthy diet. So foods rich in healthy fats, antioxidants, all the same things I mentioned: exercising, maintaining a healthy weight, managing stress. One thing we haven't mentioned is just knowing your numbers. I think, regularly seeing a practitioner or a medical health professional, whoever you interact with regularly, and understanding, your blood pressure, your cholesterol levels, your triglyceride levels. That's going to be really important to understanding like what is normal for you and if and when things are changing. And then supplementation is also valuable here. I don't think I have a slide for specific supplements, but omega-3s are something that are very powerful in supporting heart health.
So that was really great, Dr. Erin. That was a lot of information,
It
and
is.
it was just great. Thank you for breaking that down for us so much. It's pretty remarkable how many things estrogen is responsible for, and for a lot of women, like when it starts declining, we're kind of left with, well, what do we do about it? And we weren't really given a manual as to how can you support your body to make more estrogen or to naturally replenish that, right? So um, you gave some really great tips. And before we go into the Q&A, I just wanted to give this as a little bonus slide. You're welcome to take a screenshot of the slide if you like. One thing that we always recommend, or that I recommend to my clients, is that we get regular blood work done. And it's so important to get your blood work done so you're not guessing, because sometimes different symptoms or different deficiencies can be, mimicking similar symptoms. So this here is just, your vitamin D. You want at the top end of the range, B12, ferritin, which is your stored iron, your thyroid, your fasting insulin. Now, fasting insulin is one that Dr. Erin had mentioned a few times about insulin. It's very important to get your fasting insulin tested if your doctor is open to it, because it's often overlooked. So it can identify insulin resistance years before fasting glucose or the HbA1c becomes abnormal. So those are usually the gold standards, fasting glucose and HbA1c. But fasting insulin will actually give you a clearer picture earlier on. So take a screenshot of this if you need help to know, how to interpret your lab results. Reach out to the person that invited you here, or reach out to myself, and we can give you some tips as to what you might want to do to help your deficiencies and to balance out. One other thing I want to mention is exercise was mentioned quite a few times. I've got to say, from my own personal experience, for a little while there, I was exercising, eating tons of protein, but man, I was exercising like hardcore. The thing I did not know is that the more aggressively you exercise, that can also elevate your cortisol levels. So moderate exercise is wiser for women in my stage. So that's something, Erin, I don't know if you want to mention that as well, but I'm going to, and we also do have some handouts to summarize today's key points. So if you would like the handouts, again, speak to the person that invited you to this session. And there's some additional hormone health and educational tips there as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen.
Julie, before you keep going, I just wanted to make sure everybody has access to the chat. You're going to need the chat if you want to enter the giveaways. So if you are on a computer, just move your mouse and it will be on the bottom of your screen. If you're on your phone, just tap your screen and it will show up. So make sure you can see the chat because you're going to want to type in the chat very soon. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay. First of all, do we have any questions for
There's some questions in the chat, actually. The first one was, does the decline in estrogen affect liver function?
I'm trying to think what specifically. I mean, the liver is a primary site for metabolism, right? So I can't think specifically how it would have implications on liver health. Let me get back to you.
Okay, we can get back to you. That was Liz. And Christine asked, is it possible that nutrition can give us what we need if we are very mindful of our diet without supplements?
I mean, it's very, very rare that you get exactly what you need from your diet alone, and particularly those shortfall nutrients that I had highlighted in that table that I shared on one of the slides, especially vitamin D, calcium, magnesium. These are just nutrients that are really, really hard to get from your diet alone. So even if you have a perfect diet, more likely than not, you're falling short. Now, I'm not saying an overt deficiency. These are inadequacies. Deficiencies have like overt symptoms, right? Probably heard of scurvy or, those types of goiter. I'm not talking about these things. Inadequacies often display themselves as things like fatigue or trouble sleeping. And those are the common symptoms that people experience when they have these nutrient inadequacies. And you can get your vitamin D levels tested. You can see if you're not getting the nutrition that you need through, in many cases, blood work. Of course, blood isn't the best site for all nutrients, but that's a way to determine whether or not you're getting the nutrition you need. But if you feel, some, what's the right word, kind of like benign, just like fatigued or focus seems to be teetering, those are often an effect of a nutrient inadequacy or a consequent of a nutrient inadequacy.
Perfect. Thank you. Tina asks, can being awake between 2 and 5 happen post-menopause? Get this question.
Um, I mean, yeah, I think that it sounds like it's a consequence of those declining progesterone levels, which continue to decline postmenopausally. So yes, it can definitely continue to be a challenge postmenopausally. I mean, generally, and I should always caveat, we're all different, right? These are what I shared with you today is what typically occurs on average among women transitioning through this phase of life. That's not the case for everybody. But typically, as we get on the other side and have stopped having regular menstrual cycles for more than a year, a lot of these symptoms tend to, not be as severe or extreme. But of course, this can be something with progesterone levels being, low postmenopausally that you could experience those wake hours during 2 and 5.
Mary's asking, is it possible to reverse perimenopause symptoms with a change of diet and exercise?
Reverse. I don't know that reverse is the right word, but I think you can definitely minimize them or blunt them almost entirely. I will tell you, and I have done little personal studies on this. I have kiddos that we have to travel a lot with for sports. And so I'm often on the road on the weekends for their sports. And many times I forget to take my life shake with me. And I will tell you that the menopause symptoms that I'm experiencing are much more severe when I don't have my shake. We went on an extended vacation over the holidays, and I was like, what is happening? When I am doing my shake every single day, my menopause symptoms are much, much, much more manageable. I almost don't notice them. I don't know if you all know Dr. Jamie, but one of my colleagues, yeah, so she told me she's been with Shackley for years. And prior to coming to Shackley, she was a practicing physician and she focused on women's health. And she told me that in the Asian culture, they did not have a word for hot flashes. And as they started adopting an American lifestyle, a Western diet, they started experiencing hot flashes and then had to come up with a word for hot flashes. So that just tells you how powerful these phytoestrogens and soy-rich foods are and really helping to minimize the effects of menopause. As I went through all those things, so many are related to the declines in estrogen. And if you can, give your body phytoestrogens that look and act like estrogen does in a very positive way, then you can really help to mitigate those symptoms. And then on the lifestyle side, yeah, I mean, there are so many things that you can do to make these symptoms much, much more manageable or even eliminate them completely. So I encourage you to give it a try. There's no harm in trying. More likely than not, they are going to be minimized very, very significantly. And there's always a possibility that you can eliminate them completely.
So on that same note, how much soy is enough to help with symptoms?
Again, that's going to be variable from person to person. Of course, when you're consuming soy, it's not like it's going to be circulating for 24 hours after you eat it. So I think it's important to have soy or phytoestrogen rich foods throughout the day. I don't think a specific amount is important, but just trying to get it throughout the day and regularly. So maybe have, your soy life shake for breakfast, maybe snack on some edamame, maybe throw some tofu into your stir fry at night, whatever it is, just try to, kind of get it throughout the day. And then of course, if you're not a fan of soy, there are alternative ways to get your phytoestrogens.
Okay, we'll take Raquel's question and then we'll do the giveaways. If there's more questions, if there's time, we'll come back to them.
And I'm gonna look up the liver too
Okay.
while we're
And I
talking.
just want to thank Raquel for asking this question because I think it's a very important one to talk about because honestly, I face this as well. I'm going to ask about the never talked about question. What about our sexual health? Any supplements that Shaklee might have? I've read so many things that are confusing. Topicals are a Band-Aid. Is there something to help so we don't feel broken?
Oh. And I wish we had a product here at Shaklee to support this. And I think there's an opportunity for you all because we've explored this space, but ultimately backed away. I think there's still a little bit of a stigma to have conversations around this. And if you all feel comfortable or confident to send notes to your regional sales managers or to your uplines or to whomever it might be, I think having that conversation internally can help us to bring a product to you all that can help support that. In terms of things to do, I think all of the things that I meant, not all of that's not true. You know, sleep necessarily isn't going to help it, maybe not exercise, but diet, lifestyle modifications are going to have important impacts on that. Talking to your doctor too. I think there are obviously things that you can do through conversations with your doctor. Lubrication. I mean, obviously one thing that does change is vaginal dryness as a consequence of estrogen declines. So the soy-rich, phytoestrogen-rich foods can help with that. If that's what's challenging you, if it's the libido, that's oftentimes the declines in testosterone that we're experiencing. So yeah, I think that having a product at Shaklee to help support this would be really, really wonderful. But in the meantime, I think talking to a healthcare professional is great. And then doing things to support healthy estrogen levels through phytoestrogens is going to be powerful, as well as, getting your testosterone levels measured.
So somebody said bioidentical hormones for sexual health. What are your thoughts on bioidentical, synthetic, all of those things for hormone replacement?
I'm a big fan of hormone replacement. Obviously, I'm not going to push any narrative on you all. This is something every person has to make a choice about independently, but they are incredibly effective. And fortunately, the narrative around hormone replacement therapy that unfortunately was negative in the past has very much gone away. All the research that has been done showing just how valuable hormone replacement therapy is, that it does not increase your risk of any cancers, it does not exacerbate what's the right word? For women who have previously or do have breast cancer, have any implications on that. So I encourage you, if this is something that you are struggling with, to have a conversation with your healthcare professional about hormone replacement therapy, because it is proven to be incredibly safe and incredibly effective.
Awesome. Julie, I'll hand it back to you and we can do this giveaways. So get your cutting fingers ready.
I actually have a few more slides to share. Erin, if you're able to stay on, that is just fine. Where are we here? Okay. So the giveaways. I'm first going to explain just what the giveaways are, and just very briefly, and then I'll get into a few final slides, and then we'll actually do the giveaways. So we should be done in a few minutes for those of you who are in the Eastern time zone or further the other way. So first of all, one of the giveaways, one of the things that you can pick from is energizing tea. You can pick your flavor of peach, pomegranate, or matcha, and it's a blend of green teas and taurine. And this would be one of the things that you would not want to drink before bed. So that will not help with your sleepless nights. but it's very great for having in the morning. Menopause complex. So this is, again, helps reduce hot flashes, and it contains the soy isoflavones and flaxseed lignans. I'm going to mention a little bit more about the isoflavones in a bit, and also stress relief complex. This is one of my favorite products. It actually helps to blunt cortisol, so it helps to block the negative effect of stress on your body, as it also will help to give you a calm, relaxed, focused state of mind.
Julie, we can't, I don't know if you're meaning to share your screen, but we can't see it.
Oh, you can't see my screen. Okay. Well, that is unfortunate. Let's try that again. Okay, now, now do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So there was the screen that I just was supposed to share, and I'll go to this one. The Shield SPF, it's body sunscreen. This one is really great. It neutralizes free radicals, so it's not just going to protect you from the skin, from the sun. It also is good for your skin. So, and it's water resistant, and it's EWG verified. So that's something that more people are looking for now. And then also the rest of wine tea, as Dr. Erin already talked about. I already enjoyed mine tonight, so hopefully I will have a good sleep. And there's a few different bundles that have been put together just to help you with this shift. One of the biggest things you can do is definitely your food intake. So we always recommend, or I always recommend, 3 solid meals a day, protein forward. I recommend 30 to 40 grams of protein each meal, but at least 25 to 30 grams of protein every meal. Skipping meals is not really wise, I feel, for people who are, for women who are dealing with hormonal fluctuations and already, if your adrenal glands are already stressed out and dealing with more jobs, and there's so many things where your body just needs the consistent support of nutrition. So I'm just going to say, please don't skip meals. Please don't skip breakfast. It really is a very important meal. Start your day with protein. Give yourself a solid base with your diet. And then these are great boosts to help support the gaps. You have your multivitamin, your B complex. I love the Shaklee B. It's all 8 Bs in the right, all 8 Bs in the family in the right balance, so that your body can use it properly. And GLA is very good to help with hormonal balance as well. And then the energizing soy formula. So some women use a Life Shake. Some people prefer the more economical option of energizing soy formula. That is actually the protein that I started with many years ago. That's before they had the Life Shake. This is the only option that they had. And it was the thing that finally, I could say, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel with my hormonal imbalances and all my health issues and my immune system. It was just, it was a final piece of the puzzle. So I do really encourage that one. It also has in it, it's water washed, not alcohol washed. It is not, does not have hexane in it. There's so many different quality things beyond the label. I could spend an hour talking about it, but I won't. So it actually has also active ginseng and daidzein, which are the isoflavones that actually help protect you against breast cancer. So as it is helping your body to make its own, or to have a supply of estrogen, it's actually a safer, weaker type of estrogen. It's not going to stimulate anything. It's protecting you as well. So just saying, it's one of my favorites. And then the vitamin D as well. So that's one of the bundles. Another stress recovery bundle. This has your multi, your B, your stress relief complex, your D, a Vital Mag. Magnesium is very good for resting, and Omega Guard for brain health. So all of those things are very good for helping with stress recovery. Now you see up in the corner there, there's a Shield body lotion, or the Shield sunscreen, and the Good Gut and Go. Those are, if you have not ordered from Shaklee before, and this would be a new adventure for you, then you are welcome to, if you have 195 Canadian in your cart with a new join order, you can add either Good Gut as a code or sunscreen as a code, and you would get one of those products for free. So that's a pretty good value. And we also just want to mention that if you have a heart for helping others, we would love to invite you to join us in empowering people to take charge of their health, because I feel like there's no one better to help a woman than another woman. And because we've all walked the same path. And yeah, so if you have a heart for helping other women, we'd love to have you join our team as well. And thank you for joining us. Now I'm going to stop my share. Did that work? It worked. Okay. And so now we're going to ask some questions. Thank you for staying on the entire time, everybody. I think it's great. There's so many more things that we could talk about. I mean, we could have one of these sessions every week, I'm sure.